Welcome back to the life with the Browns. Contaminated. Unsafe. Do not occupy without major remediation. Those aren't dramatic taglines written by TLC producers trying to juice ratings. Those are the actual warnings issued by professional inspectors after examining Kody and Robyn Brown's Flagstaff home. And the fallout from those words is nothing short of catastrophic. The very house Kody and Robyn have been desperately trying to sell, the home that was supposed to symbolize their clean slate after the Brown family empire imploded, has now been officially classified as a health hazard. Sit with that for a second. The man who spent more than a decade on national television branding himself as the ultimate patriarch, the provider, the leader of a sprawling plural dynasty, cannot even unload a house that's safe to live in. Sources close to the situation describe absolute panic behind closed doors. One insider didn't sugarcoat it at all. They believed listing the house would solve their problems. Instead, it exposed just how deep the rot really goes. What should have been a simple real estate transaction has spiraled into a full-blown nightmare, one that lays bare years of neglect, denial, and the corner-cutting that critics say has always defined Kody Brown's decision-making. This is not a situation where a little paint and a deep clean will save the day. Inspectors reportedly warned potential buyers that the problems are so severe they would require extensive, professional remediation, the kind that can easily cost tens of thousands of dollars. This isn't just a deal killer. It's an indictment. It pulls the curtain back on a lifestyle that always prioritized appearances over substance. For years, viewers watched Kody preach about responsibility, about sacrifice, about building a legacy. He talked endlessly about providing stability and security for his family. And now that so-called legacy is quite literally toxic. The timing couldn't be worse. 3 wives have walked away. TLC renewals are shaky at best. Income streams that once looked endless have dried up. This house was supposed to be their lifeline, the asset that would keep Kody and Robyn afloat while everything else collapsed. Instead, it's become an anchor, dragging them further into financial and reputational chaos. People who toured the property didn't leave imagining family dinners or future holidays. They left with warnings echoing in their minds: health risks, environmental hazards, mandatory remediation. Try convincing someone to pay full asking price after that. And the irony? It's brutal. Robyn Brown, the wife Kody chose above all others. The woman whose comfort he protected at the expense of every other relationship. While Janelle was relegated to an RV and Christine was left raising children largely on her own, Robyn lived in the house that absorbed the bulk of Kody's attention, money, and loyalty. And now we learn that this prized sanctuary was quietly deteriorating the entire time. All that favoritism, all those sacrifices demanded of the other wives. And this is what it produced: a contaminated home that professionals say isn't safe for human habitation. But the real shock comes when you look at what inspectors actually found and what it reveals about a pattern that stretches back years. This desperate attempt to sell didn't come out of nowhere. It's the inevitable result of long-term financial mismanagement, fractured marriages, and a family structure that relied more on illusion than stability. To understand how Kody and Robyn ended up here, you have to rewind to that chaotic move from Las Vegas to Flagstaff. Remember how Kody framed it? A calling, a fresh start, a chance to finally build the dream on Coyote Pass. Sources say the truth was far messier. The family was under financial strain, and Kody uprooted 4 wives and 18 children with little planning and even less consensus. One former associate described it like watching someone burn their house down and call it a renovation. The Flagstaff home was purchased during that period of upheaval, and according to insiders, the decision-making behind it matched the dysfunction engulfing the family. Kody positioned himself as the real estate expert, the man who understood investments, values, and long-term planning. Fast forward to today, 3 wives gone, Coyote Pass still an undeveloped money pit, and the house he shares with Robyn flagged as contaminated by professionals. Now it's just the 2 of them, facing a financial reality they've never had to confront alone. Sources claim their spending hasn't adjusted at all. They're allegedly still living as if 4 wives' worth of income is flowing in every month. But the math doesn't lie, and it doesn't work. The irony deserves to be said out loud. Kody Brown spent years lecturing his wives about money, leadership, and obedience. He made unilateral decisions and dismissed dissent. And when everything finally collapsed, when income shrank, relationships shattered, and reality came knocking, his leadership delivered exactly what critics predicted all along: a very public failure. For longtime viewers, this revelation hits even harder when you consider Robyn's self-image. She built her identity around being the perfect homemaker, the nurturer, the woman who created warm, beautiful spaces. She wanted the nice house, the comfort, the security, and Kody gave it to her, at the expense of everyone else. But wanting something isn't the same as maintaining it. Because when inspectors finally entered that Flagstaff house, what they reportedly found sent shockwaves through everyone involved in the listing. This wasn't cosmetic wear and tear. Sources say the issues include significant mold contamination, possible structural damage tied to long-term water intrusion, and environmental hazards that didn't appear overnight. These problems developed slowly, over years of deferred maintenance and ignored warning signs. Mold at this level isn't just unpleasant, it's dangerous. It can cause respiratory issues, allergic reactions, and long-term health complications. An environmental expert familiar with cases like this explained that contamination this severe doesn't happen suddenly. It builds quietly, spreading through walls, vents, and living spaces while occupants go about their lives. Let that sink in. While Robyn was nesting, while Kody was prioritizing her comfort above every other wife, child, and relationship, they were likely breathing contaminated air inside the very house that symbolized Kody's devotion and favoritism. The home other family members resented because of the resources poured into it wasn't just expensive, it was slowly becoming unsafe. And now, that truth is impossible to hide. You really cannot make this up. According to sources familiar with the inspection report, potential buyers weren't just casually warned about a little surface mold. They were explicitly told that any real remediation would likely have to address damage behind the walls, under the flooring, and potentially inside the HVAC system, the very system responsible for circulating air throughout the entire house. One inspector allegedly went so far as to say buyers should absolutely not plan to live in the home without comprehensive, professional remediation that could take months and eat up a significant portion of the home's asking price. That kind of warning doesn't just cool a market. It freezes it solid. Anyone doing even the most basic due diligence would walk away immediately. And for a couple already cornered financially, that's devastating. What makes this revelation even more damning is how closely it collides with Robyn's long-crafted image. For years, she positioned herself as the wife who cared most about the home, the homemaker, the one who wanted stability, comfort, and nice things. The wife Kody bent over backward to please. But maintaining a home requires far more than decorating it or wanting it to look nice on camera. It requires vigilance, addressing leaks early, responding to warning signs, and handling maintenance before small problems metastasize into disasters. Insiders say that gap between Robyn's aesthetic aspirations and her actual homemaking follow-through has been noticeable for years. One source who visited the home before the contamination was officially documented described musty odors and visible water staining that seemed to raise no alarms inside the household. According to them, it felt like everyone was quietly pretending nothing was wrong while the situation deteriorated in plain sight. And that kind of pretending, denial stretched until reality becomes unavoidable, is perhaps the most consistent trait in Kody Brown's entire adult life. But when Kody could no longer deny that something was seriously wrong with the property, his response revealed exactly why this family collapsed in the first place. Faced with professional-level contamination that demanded expert remediation, Kody did what he has always done. He decided he knew better. Sources say Kody rolled up his sleeves and attempted to handle the problem himself.
No certifia professionals.
No documented remediation plan. No verification process. Just confidence, shortcuts, and denial. The results, according to insiders, were predictably disastrous. turning a serious but containable problem into something bordering on a full-scale catastrophe with long-term legal implications. To put this in perspective, proper mold remediation for a home of this size and severity typically costs between $15,000 and $40,000, depending on how widespread the contamination is and which systems are affected. That's a lot of money, but professional remediation actually works. Specialists know how to isolate contaminated areas, safely remove affected materials, eliminate underlying moisture sources, and confirm the space is genuinely safe before signing off. What did Kody allegedly do instead? Sources describe a string of DIY attempts using over-the-counter mold treatments, surface-level cleaning that focused on what could be seen while ignoring what was spreading behind walls, and what one insider called a truly stunning display of denial about the scale of the issue. The total amount Kody reportedly spent on these amateur fixes? Somewhere between $2,000 and $5,000, a fraction of what proper remediation would have cost, and according to those familiar with the situation, every dollar of it was wasted. Let's be brutally honest, none of this should surprise longtime viewers. Kody Brown has always believed he knows better than professionals. He dismissed marriage counselors, ignored financial advisors, brushed off his wives when they warned him the family was unraveling. He has never encountered expert advice he couldn't override with sheer confidence. And now, that mindset has left him with a house that may actually be in worse condition than before he tried to fix it. One source close to the situation described the failed repairs in chilling terms. Kody allegedly treated a serious contamination problem like a weekend DIY project, potentially spreading mold spores into areas that weren't previously affected, while doing absolutely nothing to resolve the moisture issues that caused the infestation in the first place. That's not just incompetence. That's dangerous. And the legal fallout could be severe. In most states, real estate law requires sellers to disclose known defects and environmental hazards. By attempting remediation himself, without professional documentation, without clearance testing, and without certifications, Kody may have created a liability nightmare. If the house sells and new owners later discover unresolved contamination, lawsuits could follow that would make the Browns' current money problems look trivial. So, why would Kody take such a reckless gamble? Because, according to sources, their financial situation is far worse than most viewers realize. The reality facing Kody and Robyn Brown right now is nothing short of dire. Understanding that desperation explains why Kody would even consider cutting corners on something this serious. When you examine what insiders say about their income versus their expenses, the picture that emerges is of a family in genuine financial crisis with almost no margin left. Start with the obvious. Sister Wives is no longer what it once was. The show that once revolved around 4 wives, 18 children, and endless interpersonal drama is now reduced to a bitter, divorced patriarch and his remaining spouse sitting in a house they can't sell. Sources say TLC contract negotiations have grown increasingly tense, with the network openly questioning whether audiences will continue tuning in to watch 2 widely unpopular figures navigate the wreckage of their own decisions. The era of massive per-episode paychecks supported by a sprawling family narrative is over. And without that income cushion, every bad decision, from Coyote Pass to DIY mold remediation, now carries consequences they can no longer outrun. Meanwhile, the Coyote Pass land, the property that was supposed to stand as the Brown family's lasting legacy, continues to sit completely undeveloped, bleeding money year after year. The Browns purchased that land for roughly $820,000, fueled by dreams of building homes for each wife and creating a permanent family compound. That dream has long since collapsed. The land remains empty. The wives who were meant to live there have walked away. And every single year, property taxes come due on a massive stretch of Arizona real estate that generates zero income and delivers nothing but stress and regret. One financial source who reviewed the Browns' situation using public records and industry benchmarks estimates that Kody and Robyn's monthly expenses likely exceed $20,000. When you factor in their mortgage, insurance, property taxes on Coyote Pass, day-to-day lifestyle costs, and Robyn's children still living at home, the numbers become staggering. Stack that against their shrinking income streams, and it becomes painfully clear why selling the Flagstaff house wasn't optional. It was a matter of survival. And that's where the contrast with Christine Brown becomes impossible to ignore. Since leaving Kody, Christine has done what few people thought possible. She launched a successful cooking show. She rebuilt her brand. Her social media presence exploded. She's engaged to a man who openly adores her. By nearly every visible measure, she looks happier, healthier, and more fulfilled than she ever did during her marriage. And she accomplished all of this after walking away with what appears to have been a relatively modest financial settlement. The wife Kody once dismissed. The woman he claimed he wasn't attracted to. The partner he treated as expendable. She is now the family success story. Sources say this contrast doesn't just sting, it enrages him. One person close to the situation claimed Kody cannot stand watching Christine thrive while he struggles just to unload a contaminated house. He spent years framing her as the problem, and now her post-divorce life seems to prove that maybe, just maybe, he was the problem all along. With every new success Christine shares publicly, that conclusion becomes harder to deny. As the financial pressure mounts and the house sale continues to stall, the atmosphere inside the Brown household has reportedly become toxic in an entirely different way. Sources say the blame game has reached a fever pitch, and shockingly, Kody has turned on the one person no one expected, Robyn. According to insiders, Kody has begun blaming Robyn for the condition of the house. The wife he chose over everyone else. The woman whose comfort he protected at the cost of 3 marriages and fractured relationships with his children is now allegedly the target of his rage. Sources claim Kody has been telling people that the home's deterioration is Robyn's fault, that because she was home more often and managed the household, she should have noticed and addressed maintenance issues before they spiraled into a full-blown mold infestation. One source paraphrased Kody's position bluntly. He says he was out working to keep the family afloat, and she was supposed to handle the house. Now the house is worthless, and somehow he's being blamed. Let that sink in. The man who made every major decision. The man who controlled the finances. The man who dictated where the family lived and how resources were allocated is now pointing the finger at his wife for a home that may have been problematic from the moment they moved in. The audacity is breathtaking, but it's also painfully familiar. Robyn's alleged response has been just as revealing. Sources say she has pushed back hard, arguing that Kody never allocated sufficient funds for proper maintenance, that repair requests were frequently delayed or denied due to budget concerns, and that she cannot be held responsible for structural or environmental issues that predated their occupancy. One insider claimed Robyn has been telling friends that Kody always needs someone to blame, and for years, that blame landed on the other wives. Now that they're gone, she's the only one left. This pattern isn't new. Analysts and longtime observers of the Brown family have documented it for years. Suki, one of the most perceptive commentators on Sister Wives, has repeatedly noted how elusive accountability is for Kody Brown. There is always an explanation, always a justification, always someone else responsible for his failures. The contaminated house is simply the latest chapter in a long-running story. He blamed Mary for the catfishing scandal, despite years of emotional neglect that arguably pushed her toward it. He blamed Janelle for being too independent. He blamed Christine for not trying hard enough to save a marriage he had already abandoned emotionally. And now, he's blaming Robyn for a house that inspectors say is unsafe. It raises an uncomfortable question. Is Robyn finally experiencing what her sister wives lived with for decades? While Kody and Robyn reportedly argue behind closed doors, the 3 women who escaped this dysfunction are watching from a distance, and their reactions, according to sources, range from quiet vindication to barely concealed satisfaction. Janelle, Christine, and Mary may have left under different circumstances, but insiders say they share a similar perspective on Kody's current unraveling. Janelle's response, in particular, has been described as pointed. This is the woman who lived in an RV on the Coyote Pass property while Kody and Robyn enjoyed their spacious Flagstaff home. She endured Arizona winters, limited utilities, and cramped conditions while resources flowed freely toward the favored household. For years, She watched Robyn receive comfort and stability while she made do with far less. Now that nice house has been deemed unsafe. Sources say Janelle doesn't wish harm on anyone, but she can't help noticing the irony. She lived in an RV while Robyn lived in comfort. And now it turns out that comfort was contaminated the entire time. You truly cannot script that kind of karma. Sometimes, consequences arrive with a precision that feels almost poetic, perfectly tailored to the choices that made them inevitable. Christine's perspective, according to sources, is far more settled and far more secure. Having completely rebuilt her life since leaving Kody, finding new love, and carving out genuine career success, Christine reportedly sees her ex-husband's unraveling as confirmation that she made the right decision at exactly the right time. Friends say she has privately expressed deep gratitude for getting out before the financial implosion reached its current severity. One person close to her claimed Christine once remarked, "Every day I wake up grateful I'm not dealing with that chaos anymore." Mary's position is more complicated, as it has always been. Her departure from the Brown family was the most recent and, in many ways, the most painful, especially because she and Kody were still legally married when their relationship officially ended. Sources say Mary is still processing the emotional weight of walking away from a family she was part of for more than 3 decades. But even she, according to insiders, can't ignore how dramatically things have deteriorated since she left. One person familiar with Mary's thinking suggested she feels a mixture of validation and sadness, validated that her instincts were right, but grieving what the Brown family ultimately became. Social media observers have noticed subtle but telling signals from all 3 ex-wives. Inspirational quotes about karma, posts about new beginnings, messages about leaving toxic situations behind, images of thriving, healing, and moving forward. None of them name Kody directly, but they don't have to. The subtext is unmistakable. The women who spent years being criticized, dismissed, and blamed are now living visibly fuller lives while their former husband struggles to sell a house that professionals have deemed unsafe. But perhaps the most devastating commentary on Kody's collapse isn't coming from his ex-wives at all. It's coming from his children. The Brown kids have watched their family implode from a vantage point few outsiders could ever understand. And their reactions to Kody's current struggles reveal just how deeply his relationships with them have been damaged. From Gabe's well-documented estrangement to the late Garrison's unresolved conflict with his father, to Peyton's pointed social media commentary, the next generation of Browns has been notably unsympathetic to the contaminated house crisis. Gabe's estrangement from Kody has been one of the most painful storylines in recent sister wives history. Their on-camera confrontation exposed years of resentment tied to Kody's treatment of Janelle and his rigid, selective priorities during the pandemic. Sources say Gabe views his father's financial and personal struggles as the natural outcome of decades of poor decisions. One person who has spoken with Gabe recently said he isn't celebrating his father's problems, but he's also not surprised. This is what happens when you treat people the way Kody treated everyone. The tragedy of Garrison's death adds another layer of heartbreak. Any reconciliation that might have been possible ended with that loss, and sources say the remaining Brown children are painfully aware that Kody's relationship with Garrison was damaged by the same patterns now destroying his financial stability. The contaminated house has become a symbol of misplaced priorities, broken trust, and everything Kody got wrong while insisting he knew best. Robyn's children are now caught in an almost impossible position. These are young people watching their mother become the focus of resentment, absorbing criticism from siblings and the public alike, all while living in a house professionals say is unsafe. Sources describe a household thick with tension, where arguments about blame and responsibility play out daily, and Robyn's kids are stuck between loyalty to their mother and the harsh reality that their living situation is no longer sustainable. Peyton, Christine's son, has been especially vocal, without ever naming names. His social media posts about accountability, consequences, and treating people well have not gone unnoticed. One follower summed it up perfectly. Peyton doesn't need to say who he's talking about. Everyone already knows. The criticism cuts deeper precisely because it's indirect. The emotional toll of watching a parent's empire collapse in public cannot be overstated. These are children who grew up on camera, whose family dysfunction was broadcast as entertainment, and who are now witnessing the final consequences of leadership failures they saw coming years ago. And if the family reactions feel devastating, professional analysis of the Browns' real estate situation suggests something even darker. This may be worse than the public realizes. Real estate experts familiar with the Arizona market describe the Browns' situation as potentially untenable. A home with documented contamination issues and failed remediation attempts becomes what the industry calls a stigmatized property. Even if Kody were to invest in full professional remediation now, the history of contamination and his DIY attempts would still need to be disclosed. That disclosure alone could slash offers by 20 to 30% compared to similar, uncontaminated homes. For a family already in financial distress, that kind of loss could be fatal. The legal risks go even further. Real estate attorneys warn that attempting amateur remediation while preparing to sell exposes sellers to serious liability. If buyers later discover unresolved contamination, lawsuits alleging fraud or failure to disclose could follow. Courts, experts say, have little sympathy for sellers who knew about problems and either tried to hide them or incompetently fix them without professional verification. Lowering the price isn't a simple solution either. If the Browns owe more on the mortgage than the house can realistically sell for, they could face the nightmare scenario of bringing money to closing instead of walking away with proceeds. For a family with no visible financial reserves, that scenario is nearly impossible. Speculation about their next move centers on a few grim options. Bankruptcy could provide temporary relief, but would devastate their credit. Downsizing would require finding rental housing large enough for their family, while still paying property taxes on the useless Coyote Pass land. Some insiders have even floated the unthinkable: Kody approaching his ex-wives for financial help. A humiliation almost impossible to imagine given his ego and their history. Coyote Pass, once the crown jewel of the family's future, is now their only significant asset, and even that is deeply problematic. Undeveloped land in that area is notoriously hard to sell, and the property carries the emotional weight of broken promises and failed dreams. One real estate professional put it bluntly: holding onto Coyote Pass makes no financial sense, but selling it would require admitting the Flagstaff move was a mistake. And that admission may be more than Kody can handle. As the options narrow and the pressure mounts, this collapse may finally force Kody Brown to confront a question he has spent his entire adult life avoiding. What happens when there's nowhere left to run, no one left to blame, and no escape from the consequences of your own choices? For years, Sister Wives viewers watched Kody cast himself as the unquestionable patriarch, the man who knew best, whose judgment outweighed that of the women he married. He moved the family whenever problems arose. He blamed wives when relationships failed. He demanded sacrifice while protecting his own comfort. And all the while, cameras captured the favoritism, the gaslighting, and the slow erosion of a family that might have survived under real leadership. Now the cameras are still rolling, but the story has changed. This is no longer a tale of unconventional family dynamics. It's a chronicle of collapse, with a contaminated house standing as the perfect metaphor. The rot was always there. The damage was always spreading behind the walls. And eventually, the contamination became impossible to deny. Kody chose Robyn over everyone else. Over Mary's need for connection. Over Janelle's practicality. Over Christine's emotional well-being. He made that choice repeatedly, confidently, and without remorse. And now, he is left living inside that choice, quite literally, in a house deemed unsafe for human habitation. This moment carries cultural weight beyond one family. Viewers watched the warning signs, watched the wives speak up, watched Kody dismiss them. And now we're watching accountability arrive, not through apologies or self-reflection, but through inspection reports and mold spores in a housing market that does not care about your ego. So the question remains, can Kody rebuild from this? Can his marriage to Robyn survive financial ruin, mutual blame, and life inside a contaminated home with no clear exit strategy? Or will this finally force them to confront realities they've avoided for years? Drop your predictions in the comments, because this story is far from over, and the next chapter may be the most explosive yet.